I don't consider myself a prosperity preacher, even though I'm a preacher who has prospered.
You have to look your critics in the face and say, yeah, all of that might be true, but I'm better.
Bishop T.D. Jakes, one of America's most beloved spiritual leaders, has brought his message far beyond his Dallas-based megachurch with everything from movie production to appearances on Oprah's Life Class. Now he's set for MegaFest, a spiritually focused celebration in Dallas that touches millions of people every year. I sat down with Bishop Jakes to talk about his journey and his current projects. Take me back, because you were from West Virginia, right? You had a congregation that started at 7.
Yes.
7 people.
7 people.
And it's grown to how many?
30,000 people active on the roll at the Potter's House now, plus some. We haven't actually done a recent count in a few years. And we have a church in 3 locations now in Dallas. We've spread it out in 3 locations for me to avoid having multiple services. Because I'm getting too old for that. I'm getting too old for that.
Well, you have a lot of energy.
Yeah, I do have a lot of energy. But so we're doing that now. And when you think of going back, very, very meager days, intense struggles. I worked a job, full-time job, and I was an itinerant pastor, and in the process of speaking and ministering and traveling and all of that, and going back to work and trying to make ends meet and trying to get people to come to church, and driving an hour and a half up the road in what they lovingly called a rust bucket. The floorboard was rusted out of the bottom of the car, and trying to make sure that the kids didn't stick their legs through the bottom. But I kept preaching anyway. And from those kinds of beginnings, trying to keep all of my utilities on at the same time.
Did you have a vision of having a church this large?
Oh, no, I'd never seen a church this large. I'm from West Virginia. We didn't have a church in the whole state that is as large as mine, and still don't, as far as I know. It wasn't ambition that drove me. It was purpose.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to be bigger. I was trying to be better. I wasn't trying to be great. I was trying to have depth and say something significant that mattered. And I never expected to be taken seriously by masses of people. I wasn't so much trying to reach the world as much as I was trying to untap the reservoir of what lies inside of my own heart and spirit.
But as you continued to evolve and it continued to grow, that had to be a challenging thing in its own right, just because of the sheer size.
It was both exciting and frightening. The great thing about God is that he keeps pushing you out of your comfort zone. You know, if you're comfortable, you're not growing, okay? And if you're growing, you're not comfortable.
Is that one of the sides that people don't see, that to manage a church? Because there's a lot of criticism about prosperity ministry and how much people give to the church, but you have, what, 400 employees?
300
Okay.
employees, 4,000 volunteers. We have over 150 outreaches reaching all the way to Kenya, digging wells for indigenous people that have no water, to supporting the Melchizedek School in Nairobi, Melchizedek Hospital in Nairobi, to outreaches of all types within our city, all kinds of, which have to be staffed and maintained.
How many
and supported.
funerals do you do a year?
400 funerals a year. 400 funerals a year, servicing those families, feeding the families, taking care of those families, on and on and on. It's a lot involved in it. But let me make a distinction. I don't consider myself a prosperity preacher, even though I'm a preacher who has prospered. I have prospered because I work several jobs at the same time. I have prospered because I could walk away from my church and make a living doing movies, doing television, doing a whole lot of other things. And while I am a preacher that has prospered, people who really follow me know that my message has not been, let me show you how to get rich. My message has been, let me show you how to survive life. I believe that there are biblical answers for sociological ills that will heal where we hurt as human beings, whether we are rich or poor or black or white or brown. It makes no difference whether I just left Australia or Africa. It's still the same wound. And at the end of the day, I believe that if we don't get it from a spiritual place, then we start substituting from a corrupt place.
What do you think of prosperity ministry?
I think that there are people in the body of Christ who reflect the same values as doctors, that they are specialists in their areas, that they focus on some things more than others, like the civil rights leaders or other people who focus on prosperity and other people who focus on marriage and family. I don't deny a person a right to have an area in which they are a specialist, as long as they don't fill it with gimmicks and trickeries and cons and scams to hurt the impoverished and the downtrodden. So as long as they have integrity, I think that's what we ought to focus on.
And you really diversified using your spiritual foundation as the base of what you do, but you have gone into movies. You have written a ton of books. You are speaking on the speaking circuit. With the movies, how did you get involved in production? And you're also an actor, but how did you get into that?
I don't know whether I call myself an actor. I've done a little
you
acting.
appeared in movies.
Yeah, I held on a couple of times.
As yourself.
Denzel is not worried about me, let's put it that way. But I love the business aspect of it. Production, cast development, that sort of thing, coming up with budgets, developing the whole concept around the movie and working with other experts in that arena is something that I really enjoy.
Franklin is a young guy that you work with.
Yeah, he's a great guy, a tremendous young guy that's doing great things for Sony Pictures, and I have a contract with Sony Pictures that I really, really enjoy. And for me, sometimes I've struggled to say, okay, you've been a New York Times bestseller writer, you are doing films, you are a minister, also do motivational speaking, getting ready to do a talk show I want to talk about in a moment. And I'm trying to get some kind of grip around my own life. And what I walked away with was I'm a communicator. I'm having a conversation with my generation, whether in film or in writing or in the pulpit or in a business meeting. Communication is my thing. And I pray that we never lose, that we never substitute text and tweets for human speech, because we have changed our world with a man and a microphone. Dr. King didn't use a gun, he didn't use a knife, he used a microphone. And so if we ever lose our ability to speak, we will have lost a lot.
You have produced these mainstream movies, including Sparkle, Jumping the Broom. You have this new movie, Heaven is for Real, which is based on the New York Times bestseller of the same name. That book is a really powerful book because it's about a young boy's trip to heaven, and he described it. What was it that made you know that this young man's story, this young boy's story, was authentic? Because there is doubt. There's going to be doubt, especially when the movie comes out. Is it in Easter?
Yes.
Okay. What about his story made you feel that it was authentic?
There is nothing like the testimony of a child. And he was a child, unrehearsed, undaunted. Of course, it's not a grasp for a man of faith to believe that there's heaven. It might be controversial among somebody who's agnostic or atheistic, but for a person of faith, he validates what I already believe. But we're not doing the movie to have a theological debate. We are doing the movie because I don't think that there is a human being who has ever sat beside the bedside of a dying mother or clutched a child's body who was growing cold in their arms from rigor mortis setting into their body that did not think of something beyond this world. And so I think this notion of heaven captures the imagination not only of the faith-filled, but even the faithless, that there has to be something beyond this world. And this little boy's testimony becomes the conduit through which we can have a conversation with this generation about something beyond the grave.
But there has been a lot of success with, obviously the Passion of Christ and the Bible, the series that ran. There still is a very big interest with movies that deal with faith and spirituality. Why so?
I think that we bought into the notion earlier in the American dream that if we attained the dream, got the house we wanted, the car we wanted, the office suite we wanted, that we would have happiness. And the baby boomers have boomed out and said, I did it, I got it, what was that all about? The next generation comes along and says, climbing up this hill is not as good as I thought it was. It's not as fulfilling. I think people are looking for something that satisfies, and success and fame, and we've had implants, and we've had Botox, and we've done everything we could do to look happy.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between looking happy and being happy, and I think that's where spirituality comes in. If it can undress itself from its religious clothes and its pompous demeanor and come down to something substantive that every person can use rather than an elite club for spiritual elitists who portray as if they have arrived.
One thing that's really great about you is that your love for business, the idea that you understand your talent and your gift for oratory and preaching the word, but also that aspect of business that is a necessity for you to be able to be successful. Is, in a way, running a church somewhat like running a business?
If it gets large enough, to a degree it is. You know, you have responsibilities, that you have bills that have to be paid, you have payroll that has to be made, you have taxes on those payrolls that have to be paid. There are a lot of things. If you buy property, you have to have a 3-year financial statement. If you're going to do grants, you have to have a 501c3 that fits.
Where do you get that background? Where did you get yours?
Along the way, I grew up, my father was an entrepreneur, my mother was an educator, so I grew up in that environment. And everything that I don't have, even to this day, I subsidize through the staff and team I put around me. And I think that it's important to do that.
You have to be able to.
You have to do that. You may not have it within the comprise of your own intellectualism, but there are other people around you that you have to be humble enough to allow them to speak into your life. The Bible said in the multitude of counsel there's safety. And so you have to surround yourself with people who can inform you about legal issues and so forth and so on. But for me, I don't see church as a business, but I do think that you have to have a certain business acumen if you're going to buy property, if you're going to build buildings, if you're going to make payroll, if you're going to have a human resources department, hire and fire people and give life insurance and all the things that our people deserve who work every day like anybody else. You have to have a certain business acumen in order to be able to do that.
Yet and still you have so many people that depend on you, that you're at the center of this whole ecosystem of spiritual greatness, basically, and all of the things that you accomplish. Where do you go for spiritual counsel besides God? I mean, it all comes from God, but is there another individual that you rely upon in the same way that people rely upon
Absolutely.
you? Who is that?
My spiritual father is Sherman Hawkins out of Columbus, Ohio. He's known me since I was a teenager. He's not famous. He's not on television. I don't pick my heroes by the size of their Twitter account. He's kind of a man who came into my life when my father died at the age of 16. And in a way adopted me, not legally, but spiritually. And I'm so blessed that he's still alive as we both age.
I can remember an interview you did on Oprah's Life Class where you were telling people to make sure that they don't confuse talent with purpose. Somebody needed us to be something that we were not created to be. Yet you're a preacher, you're producing movies, you're doing all these things. Have you ever felt like, you know what, this is a business or this is an area that I don't want to get involved in?
Politics is one, you know. People say, you ought to run for something. I said, run for the House. I'm going to run for the House. I read about it, but you don't ever have to worry about me doing that. It's just not anything that I'm called to do. And the way that I see my life, I don't see myself as a preacher who does this, that, or the other. I see myself as a person, okay? And everything that I do, whether it is preaching, writing, movies, is true to who I am, not to the preacher, to T.D. Jakes. So once you know who you are, not some title somebody put on you, because people define you by how they met you. If I see you as a commentator or a journalist, I met you as a journalist, but that doesn't mean that somebody else knows you as a son and as a father. You're a person. So I am T.D. Jakes, and I minister, and I write, and I think, and I learn, and I grow. But you can't just lock me up into how you met me and say he is a preacher and put a period where God put a comma.
You said that you want to stay out of politics, but I think you're pulled in a lot. Like with the Trayvon Martin thing, you also were involved with Katrina. That was something that was about suffering, but it was really politicized.
It was politicized, but it was really about suffering. You really answered the question in the question. Sometimes politics will cannibalize a human story. Trayvon Martin is not politics. He's a dead little boy who was shot to death by a man, who has mothers and fathers on both sides of this. These are people. So I'm not drawn to the politics of it. And when they get into the deep politics of it, then let the politicians debate about it, because they know that turf better than I do. But when it comes to comforting the suffering, dealing with those that are hurting, dealing with the community who is wounded by it, then that's very pastoral.
Is that a message that you have to continue to put out there? Because it would be easy for people to forget what your real purpose is.
Well, you know, you cannot worry about being misunderstood. When I saw our grandmothers on the roof in Katrina, yes, there's politics all around it, but I want to help.
You were there with President Bush.
I was right in the middle of it.
He was criticized for coming too late.
And he was too late, much too late. There's no question about that.
Did you tell him that?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. But I do not talk to people in public with whom I can speak to privately. If you speak through the media to somebody that you can call, there is a hypocrisy in that, a tyranny, if you will, that you lose that opportunity
Especially
to have
in
their
the
ear.
black community.
In any community, you know, it's horrendous, but it's so prevalent in our community. Yeah. And so what I tried to do was to talk to him about some of the realities that were going on in Texas and other places, about people who had taken in more people than they could feed, and that we needed vouchers and we needed programs to be able to handle the situation. And I knew over time people would begin to realize that this wasn't totally a federal failure. It was also a municipal failure and a state level failure. It was failure enough to go around everywhere. But let's figure that out after we get Grandma off the roof.
Were you able to privately speak with Bishop Eddie Long when he went through his challenges and the allegations that were made against him? Have you ever had a chance to speak with him?
I have tried to counsel him and encourage him during that tragedy. And really, my heart really went out. I thought that it was a tragedy that nobody wanted, you know. Everybody suffered. Everybody got wounded. His kids, his family, his church, those boys, those allegations, the cloud that still remains over everyone involved in it, I thought was tragic.
You said you tried to counsel him. Were you able to counsel him?
You can counsel a person as much as you can and try to comfort them. I don't know whether you can say that they do what you say or every time you tell them what to do.
Right.
Yeah.
With the challenges that we're seeing in the Catholic Church right now, and a lot of the out-of-court settlements, what is the impact that all of this has on the brand or the perception of the church? And
well, let's start with the impact it has on the victim. Okay, let's start with the impact it has on the victim, because if we prioritize the impact that it has on the church at the expense of the victim, particularly where you're talking about young boys who are being molested, I think they have to take the priority there. And ultimately, we have to find a way to be able to move about the king's business with honor and dignity and class. And when there is failure, we have to correct that with the priority being on the victim. Now, once you do that, then the collateral damage, you have to do some reform with the church and make some other changes in order to be more effective. Mm-hmm.
And as you continue to build, especially MegaFest and all of the movies and all of the things that you're involved in, how far do you expect to go? I mean, what are your dreams?
My dreams are to start things I can't finish, to begin things that I can't end, to set off fireworks that I never see fall. But maybe my children and the next generation will finish what I start. Mm-hmm. I've reached a point in my life that I'm satisfied. I'm fulfilled. I'm accomplished. I can go fishing on the side of the bay, it'd be good. I don't mean because of substance. I've answered the questions about who am I? My sons, this next generation that are not even related to me, have those questions yet to answer. I want to leave them clues. I want to get them started. I don't want it to be as hard for them as it was for me.
Do you worry about this generation? I mean, when you look at, especially in major urban centers like Philadelphia and Detroit, where there's a 33% graduation rate for young black males, since we were talking about that. Do you worry about that? Do you see kind of a generational issue?
I worry about this generation for a lot of reasons. I think that they are bright and talented and gifted. I think that they are full of life and zeal, but sometimes struggle to do things that were simplistic for our generation. And as I interact with them and as I try to mentor them and really try to pour into them, I think that they didn't get some things that they really needed. And I'm starting to understand that. And I'm not critical of them because they are our children. They are our children, and I'm in it with you. Whether you sink or swim, whether you're right or wrong, whether you're up or down, I'm in it with you. I want to see them have the tools that they need, inner strength, tenacity, to accomplish their dreams without the sense of entitlement. I think they've underestimated how much it costs to be something in this world. And that underestimation has caused them to have a deficit and a disappointment. And I'm so worried that they're discouraged at 30 and frustrated at 35 when you should be at the height of who you are.
Where does fatherlessness fit in with that?
It's huge. It's huge. It's gigantic. My father gave me my discipline. He gave me my marching orders. He demanded things of me. They've been overly mothered, and some of them have been grandmothered. They didn't even have mothers. I'm amazed at how many of them were tossed to grandmothers, old ladies who couldn't keep up with them. So they kind of raised themselves. Between iPads and entertainment centers, they did the best they could with what they had, and now they're old enough to be men, but haven't had the kinds of things that we benefited from, like, boy, get up out of that bed, get yourself together. You know, that discipline. They have no inner voice that makes them fight for what they believe in. And that's a generalization. I'm not saying that about all of them. But in the cases that I'm working with, is to kind of go back and put that infrastructure up under them that they need to have.
All right, well, the struggle continues, and you will stay out there fighting. Thank you so much, Bishop Jakes.
Pleasure.
With Bishop T.D. Jakes, I'm Lee Hawkins. We'll see you next time.
She was human, and if you're human and you live in this world, you're going to have struggles. Now, what that struggle is, what is important to me is that, and I say this in the book, because my struggle is not alcohol, because my struggle is not drugs, I'm not one to sit and demeanor or talk down about those who have those struggles.
But is there a need for a vigorous, youthful protest? And if so, are there candidates out there that could be the next Jesse Jackson?
Well, apples fall when you shake the tree. You have to keep making things happen.